Welcome to the Attack Action Podcast,
where we talk about friendship, fun times, and most importantly, flesh and blood. Here are your hosts, Taylor and Isaac.
Hello, Attactioneers. It is I, Taylor, and I'm here joined, as always, with my best friend and co-host, Isaac. What's up, dude?
It is I, Isaac, as well. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Today, this evening, this morning, whatever time it is for you all out there, we have a very special guest, fellow California resident, Tyler Horspool, has joined us on the pod. Everybody knows who Tyler is, but he's won the first giant calling in Las Vegas, top 8 at U.S. Nationals, top 64 at the Pro Tour, has won many tournaments, and was just a real pleasure to talk to. So I hope you will all enjoy that. But first, Taylor, do we have any news?
Yeah, Uprising is delayed in the United States. So July, the first weekend of July is when Uprising will be out. Kind of a bummer, but
This is bad news.
It is what it is, and it's not the worst thing, you know. I think Blake from Outcast Haven had like a great little tweet about it, like, oh, so I've played through Star Wars Destiny and every set got delayed by months, so this is like nothing. And I was like, you know what, that's totally fair. As a person who did that as well, good call. So just be patient, everyone. It'll be okay.
Yeah, I remember that. It would be like a month or two delay at the last minute or something. You were like,
yeah, totally.
It's what am I supposed to do?
5 days before the set comes out. It won't be out for 2 more months. And you're like, wait, what? How are we finding this out now? This is wild. Were you just hoping? Anyway, we could talk about that for forever. So yeah, we had Tyler on, a great dude, really kind of long podcast. We didn't get to any kind of listener questions we pulled off of Twitter for him. So you're going to just have to ask him yourself. So sorry, because we just we're gabbing along and lost track of time, and we needed to go. So,
yep. We will definitely answer questions for our next guest, though, if you leave them on Twitter. So please do not give up hope. Still leave us questions, because I really appreciate it. It just ran a bit long this evening, and we got a bit lost down our, different paths and tangents and all that.
Totally. We'll have them on again. Don't you worry.
Bank those questions.
Don't you worry. So I have a couple of shout outs before we get into our interview with Tyler. This last weekend was pre-release, so big shout out to the Portland area. I made the hardcore road trip up to Portland and back, and I had a blast. Everybody there is so cool. Discs and Dice Premier Store in Troutdale, owned by friend of the show, Travis, aka On It. Just a great scene over in Portland. Great stores, well run, and it was such a blast. I went with 2 locals. Shout out to Levi and Patrick. Their first out of the area Flesh and Blood tournament, and all 3 of us top 8'd our first pre-release, and Patrick won it. So it was freaking awesome. Those young guns were over the moon psyched that they first thing they did was top 8 an event. So it was a ton of fun. So shout outs to all those folks.
Pretty good track record.
I know, right?
Yeah, I only attended one pre-release, but I had a great time playing with all of our locals, some of whom are listeners. So thank you guys. I just had so much fun hanging out. We live in a pretty rural area, so I only had one release to go to, but am very grateful that we do have all of you locals to, give us some in-store, in-person games, or to have that available for us. Um, oh, I
Yeah.
beat Patrick, so I think I basically won Portland, right? Isn't that how that works? By our
I
continued fab logic on the pod.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how that works.
Till you
You know,
beat one person once and you just get all of their trophies, basically, you know.
yeah, yeah, basically. And the cutoff for when they can beat you to steal those trophies back ends immediately as soon as you beat them. So it's impossible to win in this scenario. I have a master's degree, so I can say that. Yeah. Great.
um, well, is there anything else before we move right into it?
No, that's it. I hope everybody just enjoys this episode. I didn't know Tyler too terribly well before coming into this, and now I think I've found a kindred spirit. I hope he would say the same. We didn't talk about it on the pod, but I'm sure he'll slide into my DMs after listening to this particular minute of me talking. So that'll be
Me
great.
too. What a great guy.
Totally. One of the greats. So enjoy our interview with Tyler Horspool. Okay, we're here with Tyler Joseph Horspool, the Prism extraordinaire. Is Joseph your middle name? I just threw a shot in the dark there.
No, I was like, where did you pick up that? That was interesting, threw me off. My middle name is Bryant, actually, like
Ah,
Kobe Bryant.
nice.
It's good to
Close.
be here, though. Thanks for throwing me off there. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I listen to you guys all the time. I would say that you're probably one of two podcasts that I actually listen to for like actual informational purposes. Like, and I'd say that's high praise. The other one being Arsenal Pass, but I wouldn't say that I listen to very many other podcasts for the purposes of like keeping my game up and like actually like getting better as a player. So thank you guys for keeping on and putting all the podcasts out.
Awesome. Thank you. That's probably the best compliment you could have given us. Um, yeah, I probably mentioned your name on our podcast like a little bit, like an embarrassing amount of times, maybe when just looking for an example of a competitive player. So
You're not the
I'm
only
glad
one.
you've been enjoying it.
You're not the only one for sure.
I wanted to ask you up top. So obviously, my name is Taylor, and a lot of times I'll introduce myself, and then later in a party or social situation, they say, "Oh, it's nice to meet you, Tyler," and then I have to go, "Oh, no, no, my name is Taylor." Does the opposite ever happen to you?
It does not. Although I do have a funny story. One of the guys that works at my local game shop, and he's also kind of a competitive player when it comes to other games that I play, gets mistaken all the time for me just because of the way that he looks. And they're like, "Wow, Tyler, you lost a lot of weight." And he's like, "Actually, no, I'm George." So,
Nice.
yeah, I guess maybe when you reach my level of stardom, then
Right. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's got to be him, right? That's got to be
yeah.
Yeah.
him."
Is that
Yeah.
him?
Awesome. Well, we're really psyched to have you on the podcast. Um, you're a California native. I understand in SoCal. So, uh, give us a bit of background about yourself. As far back as you want to go, as detailed as you want to go. We're here for it. Your fans are here listening. So,
That's that's a big wind. That's a big door for you to open for me because I could just come crashing through.
well, you're a big
Um,
deal.
thank you. I'm not. Yeah, well, I'll take it. All right. So I started playing games when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I come from a gaming family. We love playing board games. I learned how to play poker when I was 5 6 years old. Um, and then from there, video. I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but video games were kind of becoming mainstream and kind of invented around this time. So I remember playing like one of my first video games that I ever played on a computer was called Eco Quest, and it was about you're like somebody swimming through the ocean and you're trying to pick up trash. Maybe it was a little bit before its time, but it was interesting, introduction to video games. From there, I played like Doom and then eventually like Counter Strike and StarCraft and Warcraft. These games were coming out, so I played a lot of that growing up. And then I got into like board gaming and TCGs in high school. So my first foray into board games was chess, outside of like playing with your family and things like Life or Monopoly or whatever. Was chess, and this was my first chance to like really set myself apart and be like competitive at board games. And as a freshman, I walked into our local chess club and they were having a tournament. So I kind of like taught myself how to play, looked up stuff online, which was kind of sparse at the time, but kind of figured out what I was doing. And I ended up, it was a weird thing because the teacher didn't really know how to set up a bracket properly. So we ended up with 3 people at the end instead of 2 like you're supposed to. And and the weird part was that like my game matched up against one of the players so well that I was continuously beating him. Then he was beating the other player, and that player was beating me. So we just couldn't get to the end of it because the bracket was set up wrong. And so we just ended up splitting the prizes in a 3-way split. But they were both seniors, and I was a freshman, so I felt really good about that. And I think that gave me the taste of my competitive drive. And I think those are the 2 things I guess there's 3 things that really put me into like where I am today, as far as like, okay, now I'm into Magic and Flesh and Blood. Now I'm really into Flesh and Blood, right? Like that's my main jam. And the 3 things that really put me into that growing up were you know, I love the gathering part. James White always says bringing people together through great games, right? And that really resonates with me, is that I like playing great games. I like being together with people playing those games. And then the third thing that, he doesn't talk about specifically in that sentence is that competitive drive. And so those 3 things are all in Flesh and Blood, and that's how I got into Flesh and Blood. I had some friends that pointed me in that direction. I was like, hey, this game is excellent. It's somewhere in between chess and Magic, in my opinion, as far as the luck factor is concerned. It's a little bit closer to chess, which I like, but there's still some variance involved, especially when you're talking about Starvo and things like that. But that leads me to where I am today, and I'm always on the hunt for more tournaments. In fact, you just talked about how I was a Southern California native. We have a tournament coming up, a Battle Hardened, next month, which I understand you guys will be doing the commentary on. So I'll be playing, you guys will be commentating, and I'm very excited about that. So it's like the story continues from there, to be continued.
Yeah, the narrative is always really really fun, and how it just continues over the years as we'll mature. I did think it was really interesting you mentioned you like poker quite a bit, because I kind of see a lot of parallels, right? Because in poker there's like variance hand by hand, but you need to beat your opponent across the whole game, right? Which is kind of what Flesh and Blood is. It's like there's variance in each individual hand, but over the course of the game, if hopefully the more skilled player wins. And I hadn't really thought about that much before. I haven't played poker in a little while, but it's kind of an interesting parallel.
You'd be surprised at how many card players in general you meet, or chess player. Like there was a chess convention going on at the Vegas World Premiere that I was just at, and almost the entire table was chess players, Magic players, and Flesh and Blood players. And you'd be surprised at how people go back and forth between the games and such, all of these games. And so, it's why if this was a new game that came out of nowhere, people are like, they might pick it up or they might not. But when you have people that love being in this sphere and all the games are kind of similar with different rules and they play differently, you end up with a lot of the same people.
For sure. A couple of things you said there. So your note about chess, I actually, in preparation for one of our episodes on tempo, me and Isaac had like a lot of conversations about how, you know, the idea of tempo is maybe a little bit easier to understand in chess. So I went and played some games of chess at the high school I work at, and I like beat one freshman kid, and I was like, okay, sweet, great, yeah, because I like knew one period that they always like play, and then another kid just like definitely was gonna beat me, and I like, you know, kind of slow played a little bit so the period would end and be like, oh, sorry, gotta go, you know. Um, so in a way, shout out to Cesar. You know, he's you, the freshman beating the senior. You know, but I don't play chess, and he was definitely better than me. So, uh, yikes. But and then for the road trip stuff, like I just got back. Like me and two local guys went and blasted a like Portland road trip, which is like 7.5 hours from my house. Um, for pre-release, and you know, we had a blast. We went to Portland, played two pre-releases in the same day, drove back for our locals on Sunday, and it was just like, you know, all fab all the time, listening to fab podcasts, talking fab stuff. And you know, even though I did pull a Marvel and Crown of Providence in one of the pre-releases, the best part was the social part, like getting to see homies that I know in Portland, and driving up with the homies, and you know, all of that stuff. That's like the takeaway, which is I think one of the most positive things about being like really into games type of thing. You know, it's like winning is cool, but like you said, the relationships we have is like what we really remember and what makes it really good.
Yeah, so talking a little bit about that. Well, first, let me one up you on the pools. I've been to a world premiere. I did a draft in Vegas, and then I did two pre-releases. And between those and the prize packs, I opened the cold foil Draconic chess piece. I opened the cold foil arms for the Illusionist. I opened a Marvel Dragon and a rainbow foil Crown of Providence. So I was just like luck boxing my way through these packs. Anyway, to your point about how the gathering part is, I wanted to talk a little bit about how like you don't have to be in the like just because I consider myself a competitive player doesn't mean I have to be in that mindset all the time. When I go to
Yeah.
pre-release, I want to have fun and I'm more in the gathering mindset.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I want to be like just enjoying the game mindset and doesn't even have to be particularly about competition or meeting people. I just can enjoy the game. And then sometimes most of the time I would say I'm on that competitive drive, that drive to be better, to better myself and to make myself
Right.
better than other people. And so I think it's excellent that no matter like some people can be more on one of those tracks than others, and between I know for myself I'm on a different one of those tracks at any given time, and so I love that about the game.
That's good because sometimes it's hard to, or hard for some people to like separate those things just on the fly. Remember, like the last two pro quests I went to, I did not plan on going to Lille, so I was not really, super emotionally or personally invested in the game. I like wanted to do well, but I was just like having so much fun playing against everybody. It was maybe a little bit too chipper, and like some of my opponents were maybe like pretty serious, and I'm like, just joking with them and stuff. But it's really, yeah, I don't know, kind of freeing or nice to just like approach any event casually every once in a while, and just like, I'm here to have fun, and
Yeah.
not, I'm here to top four or whatever. So I think that's important for probably everybody to do.
Totally. And it's great to hear like someone who's had as much success as you have had, Tyler, um, to say that they like enjoy the game, they enjoy being casual, they enjoy the gathering. You know, as a competitive person myself, there's always that thought in the back of your mind, like, the other guys out there like probably not enjoy just spiking events and always grinding and stuff, and I'm over here taking the weekend off, like having fun, just playing a meme deck or something like that, you know. And so it's good to know that, you know, you're a person, not a robot. So can confirm, Tyler Horspool, Tyler Bryant Horspool. Human being.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, human things.
That's what they taught me in robot class.
Totally. Tyler, I also wanted to touch base with you about teaching because I
Oh yeah.
myself am a teacher. I teach both at a high school and at our community college. And so, what do you teach is what I want to know. Let's talk
Yeah.
teaching.
Okay, let's talk teaching. I well, it's kind of awkward right now because I taught now. I'm looking for another job, still in the teaching field. I very much enjoy teaching, but I quit on my own terms on this one. But I did teach up until now at a K through 8 private school, and I taught mostly the math classes. So um, it was a religious school. It's a Catholic school. So and I'm not myself Catholic, so I wasn't teaching the Catholic courses. So instead, I would teach all the math courses, and then we had somebody who taught the literature courses, especially for the upper grades. So I taught 8th grade math, 7th grade math, 6th grade math, and I even taught all the way down to 3rd grade math for a moment there. Um, but it was like math, math, math. I taught a lot of computers. I taught some social studies. Out of private school, you kind of have that leeway of just
Right.
teaching what you want. Um, there were some downsides, which is why I ended up quitting, which is, maybe the hours were a little too long and the pay was a little too low. Gas prices are getting a little too high. But I very much enjoy teaching, and the kids were and the parents were really sad to hear that I was leaving. But yeah, teaching. I would say that whenever I sit down at a flesh and blood game or a poker tournament and I say I'm a math teacher, like people are like, oh, I get it. Oh, that's why you're so good at this. Like
This
that
sounds
comes
like the
with
plot to a movie.
it. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll be going back to school here because actually I didn't. I actually kind of fell into teaching.
Hmm.
I majored in economics at for my degree, and I originally wanted to get into like finance, like I wanted to be a stockbroker or something like that. And I had a couple meetings with people, and it just wasn't for me. Like there was a lot of talking about how you need to like basically go beg people to buy your stuff and that kind of thing. And while I'm a salesperson in the right thing that I like I can be a great salesperson for Flesh and Blood or anything like that. I it wasn't for me to just go at somebody's doorstep and sell something that I didn't particularly believe in or not. And so I decided that wasn't for me. And I had a friend who was like, you should get into subbing while you're trying to figure out what to do. And so I went and subbed for a while originally, and I was like, hey, I kind of like this idea. I've done some tutoring in the past, and I like this. Maybe I should get into that. And especially when I got towards the end of subbing, the main problem I had with subbing in particular was that there was a lot of sad stories of for the kids. And as a sub, you're only there 1 or 2 days, so I couldn't really fix what
Yeah.
was in their life in 1 or 2 days. So um, now, as a full time teacher for the last 3 years, I've had a lot more effect on the kids' lives, and I have a lot more like, hey, they need help with this. Let's get them that help, and that's been really good for my own mental as well as theirs. So I very much prefer the full time teaching to the subbing, but I might be going back to subbing while I get my credential and then get into probably high school math or junior high math is what I'm looking at.
Oh, sweet. Well, the school district I work for definitely needs another math teacher. So if you want to move, 16 hours north, you can crash at my place and we'd be teaching buddies together.
Hey,
Huh?
hey, but don't say things you don't mean because I might take you up on it one
I
day.
mean, you got dogs, you're a dog guy. Boom. That's all I need. Teacher, dog guy, flesh and blood. Boom. Friendship engaged.
Absolutely.
Sweet. So you had to teach through COVID and lockdowns and that sort of thing.
Yes. So we actually had a lot of teachers let go during that time, and as a new teacher, I thought I was going to be on the chopping block. But because I'm younger, I'm very technology based. So I was already teaching the computers
Hmm.
classes. I was kind of made myself unlet goable because
Right.
they needed
Yeah.
the experience.
Indispensable.
I made
Yeah.
myself indispensable. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to teach through that, and it's weird because a lot of people think, um, the COVID must have been hard on all the kids. It actually worked for some of my kids. Some of my kids
Mm.
obviously it didn't work for like people think in their minds, but for some of my kids, like they when they were on distance learning, they actually excelled, and then when they got back with all the distractions, they fell apart again. So
Yeah.
that was kind of interesting in its own sense. But yeah, I did a lot of the distance learning, and then for the last year, we did not do distance learning at all this
Right.
year. So.
Yeah, we were in person this year too, but my college courses have all been online and that sort of thing. Which
Are they still looking to be online next year as well?
no, I think we're doing a larger portion in person at College of the Redwoods, which is good. Um, students are more bought in a upfront scenario, and teaching online uh, is okay. Y- you just don't have the. I mean, the best part about teaching for me is the connection you make with your students and the actual teaching and mentoring. Like the days where that goes really well at the high school I work at are like there's no day that's better than that. It's just like I come home talking to my wife like, "Oh my god, I taught this student this thing and we had a breakthrough, etc." And it makes the whole thing worth it. And in those moments I'm like, "Man, this is like the best job. I'm so glad I'm doing this job." But teaching online is like all I get the most interactions I get are with my students who are not doing very well and send me emails like 10 minutes before the due date like, "Oh, sorry, I'm like been really whatever all week." And I'm just like, "Sorry, it says in the syllabus no late work." Like, also, I'm not getting this until the next day because I'm not up at midnight on Sunday. I'm I'm asleep. So, I'm very sorry. So that's really hard to deal with for a whole semester on your mental health.
Yeah,
Even though yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I couldn't agree more. I'm coming from to teaching from like that's the reason that I teach, and in fact, at one of my teacher trainings, the thing that really resonated with me is that when these kids leave, and you can tell when you grow up, you don't remember how to you don't remember exactly what the Pythagorean theorem might be or what you learned in a specific history class, but you'll remember those stories of a teacher that might have looked out for you, or obviously a lot of the things with your peers, but that really resonated with me. And I have a couple students that um, I'll be vested in their what they're going to be doing as they're growing up as well, and I'm sure I'll check in with their parents and whatnot. But and I've even told them that I'm willing to come back to go do decathlon again. We have an academic decathlon at our school, and when gaming and teaching collide, that's when I'm in my element, I guess. So
Heck yeah. Sweet. All right. Enough chit chat.
yeah,
I now know that you're a big math guy. So this is going to be great because I have a brand new segment for everybody. Isaac, you get to participate in this as well. This is called By the Numbers. So this is going to be a quiz situation. I have 6 questions. Each of you gets 3 questions each. And there is one correct right answer. And each of you will have a chance to steal the other person's question. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Okay. So this is all kind of percentage based off of a website I found. I don't know how good this data is. So don't be mad at me. Be mad at this website and maybe help them out. So I got this from favbrec.gg. I don't know. Have you guys heard of that website?
I have
Okay.
not.
So it's similar to something not we, I don't play Magic, that there is in Magic, EDH Rec or something
Uh,
like that, where they keep track of cards in decks and that sort of thing. That makes sense?
Yeah, I've heard. I think I've heard of this. That there was a similar thing for Fab that came out
Great.
or something like that. Yeah.
Cool. So we'll be going off of those numbers for this quiz. Tyler, since you are the guest, you get to have the first question. Do you both have any questions about what is about to happen to you?
I mean, a bunch, but let's go.
Yeah, let's just do it.
Some of these questions are from God. Okay. Tyler, what is the least played card in Prism, but it has seen play, and this is historically speaking in Prism's lifespan as a deck. So there's one card that has been played in a Prism deck, but this is the least played card.
Wow, I expected them to be hard questions, but I didn't expect it to be this hard.
Wait, is
It
this
has to, it
does
has
this
to be a
include
card.
generics or light cards or just illusionist cards?
Well, that's good. I'll give you a hint. It is an illusionist card.
And it's not a weapon. Like, it has to be a card in your deck.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
a card in the deck, in the 60,
Um,
in the 80.
Spears of Cerility would be my guess.
Ooh, that's pretty good. No, Spears beats out Yellow Prismatic Shield. Oops, sorry,
Wait,
Isaac.
I don't
You
get to
got it.
steal?
Yeah.
Were you gonna guess yellow
You're gonna guess
prismatic
yellow?
shield?
No, I was going to guess blue prismatic shield.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I would have given him
Close.
half a point. Give him half a point.
Blue
Okay,
glisten would be pretty good too.
Isaac, you get 1/2
Listen.
point. Sorry, I got so excited. I just couldn't believe that Yellow Prismatic Shield was played. 5%.
It's okay. This game is rigged. I'm going to lose anyway.
5% of decks, Prism decks, apparently in Classic Constructed had Prismatic Shield, according to the numbers. Okay, Isaac, here's your question. What is the least played card in Azalea? Same thing, historically speaking, etc. Yeah, figure it out.
Jeez.
You can do
This
it.
is tough. I'm going to go with the blue. No. I don't know. Blue paving helix.
Okay, we're locking that in as your final answer. Tyler, chance to steal because Isaac, you're wrong.
Oh no.
Let's go with yellow tape cover.
Oh, that's very good. But no, that's not correct. The card is Nimble Strike Red. Nimble Strike Red. Yeah.
Oh, I used to run that. One
Tricky.
of 3 nimblisms, 1 nimble strike.
Yeah.
Then
Hell
you
yeah.
should know. Then you should know.
It was in my deck.
Yeah.
Okay, the score is 0.5 to 0. Okay, champ. Tyler, you're up here. Now, this is your nemesis, Briar. So hopefully you can get this one down because you got to play both sides of the table here. In Briar, what is the least played equipment between, you have two choices here, Shock Charmers or Null Rune Rub? Which one is least played in Briar decks?
I'd have to go with Null Rune Robe.
You are correct. Yep. Shock Charmers has 1 percentage point better than Null Rune Robe.
Oh, I'm in the lead now.
You're in the lead now. It's 1 to 1.5.
Shock Charmers is
0.5.
excellent after that little Kano run.
Totally. But this is like all of Briar's lifetime, you know?
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
it probably is getting a bit of a bump there. Okay, Isaac, over to you. What is the most played non-attack action card in all decks?
In all of time.
Yeah, in like competitive seasons, right? So think about this a bit more. What have been the most highly represented pies of the meta, etc.?
I don't know. I'm taking too long. I'm going to say red nimblism.
Okay, that is incorrect. Over to you, Tyler.
Least played non-attack action card.
Most played non-attack action card.
And it doesn't have to be generic. It can be from any class.
Correct.
Flicker Wisp.
Oh, cool. No, you're on to something with thinking it's a Runeblade E card. It's Gorgonian Tome is the most played non-attack action card.
I guess it is a 1-of in the decks that it's played in.
Yep, and it splits between all of the Rune Blades who have all been very good in the meta, so they're all playing it, etc.
Makes
Okay.
sense.
No change in score. Isaac, you have half a point. Tyler, you have 1 point. Okay. Whose turn is it? Is this Isaac's question now, or is this Tyler's? Okay, it's
Last
Tyler.
one was that, yeah.
Okay, what is the most played attack action card and non-attack action card historically in Guardian? Yeah, attack and non-attack.
See, this is where
all are playing.
You have to see like where the data comes from, because is there like a lot of old data? Is there not? I'm gonna go with that, since it's probably a newer site. I'm gonna go with Oak and Old is the most played attack, and the most played non-attack is in Guardian. And not, it has to be non-attack, not a defense reaction.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm taking too long. I got to think of any non-attack action that Guardian plays. Terra Sunder.
Okay, half a point for Tyler. Terra Sunder is the most played non-attack action. Isaac, can you get the most played attack action?
No way. I thought it was Blessing of Deliverance, but
that's a non-attack.
I know.
You thought
the beginning of time
okay,
that would take it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Disable. I think everybody runs blue Disable.
Ooh, that's pretty good. I like that generic Guardian attack. No, it is Spinal Crush. Crush.
That makes sense.
Right. Starvo, I think, makes that number a bit different there. Okay, great job. Oh, this is fun. All right, Isaac. Here you go. You need this bad boy to take the lead and tie the game up. Okay?
Take it and tie.
Here you go. Which card in chain is not in 90% of the decks? So one of these 3 cards I'm going to give you is not in 90% of the decks. It's less than 90. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Is it A, Shadow of Ursa, B, Shrill of Skullform Blue, or C, Command and Conquer? These are chain decks. 2 of these, 90% of chain runs. One of them, they do not.
C, Command and Conquer.
Ooh, exciting. That is correct. Command and Conquer is like 86% of decks are running Command and Conquer, but not 90%, according to these numbers. All right, we have a tie game. This is the most exciting thing ever. I couldn't have scripted it better myself. So we have a tiebreaker final question here, okay? It is a single question that I'm going to give to both of you at the same time. You're going to internalize, write down, text your wife, whatever you need to do with your answer so you have it saved somewhere, and then we will blurt it out at the same time. You guys got that?
Real sports moment. I'm ready.
Yeah, totally. This is what the people are here for, is these moments. Okay, tiebreaker final question. Which card in Flesh and Blood has the most flavor text? Take your time. Think about it. Try not to listen to what I'm saying while I fill time while you think. Most flavor text. Which card in Flesh and Blood has the most? Yeah.
It would be great if I ever looked at the flavor text. My guess is going to be Staunch Response.
Okay. Tyler goes with Staunch Response. Isaac, do you have a guess? We were supposed to blurt them out all at the same time, but that's fine. Isaac got a free half point to get to here anyway, so it's fine. It's
Brutal Assault.
Oh, very close. It is actually a brand new card, so that's maybe why it's tricky. It is Critical Strike.
Oh.
Critical Strike has the most flavor text. Boom. There you go. You guys are both winners. Thank you for participating in By the Numbers. Great job, Tyler. Great job, Isaac.
Look at all that flavor text.
Oh, he's got critical
Oh,
strike right there for the
Simply
listeners
nice.
at
whatnot.
home. He has it. Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you for participating. Now let's get into some nitty gritty. Isaac, how about you take it off here and let's talk some real flesh and blood stuff.
All right. Well, I did have one kind of related question, but I was just wondering, as a teacher, you go to a lot of competitive events, right? Is it kind of difficult to make or do you just get like the red eye on Friday? Is it easy to get time off? I mean, how does that line up?
It's not easy to get time off. I would say that I would say the overwhelming majority of my time was taking that red eye. Sometimes the events like lined up where it was like, oh, we have Friday off anyway, and I get to go up on Thursday. But especially Pro Tour was a hassle. I had to do some favors for that one. But
Oh,
yeah, most of the time I am struggling to get the time off, and in even the time to practice can be troublesome from time to time. So, um, yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Gotcha. Um, okay, so I'll just bring us into our first main topic here. So we have a pretty wide open brand new meta, right? Like a new set dropped, and the top or two out of the top three decks achieved Living Legend and will be banned. So I was kind of wondering, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to approach a new meta. You can start with a deck that's really strong, like AKA Prism at the moment, and figure out how it plays into, old heroes that will adjust, new heroes in theory. You can tackle each new hero and try to break them, and then work your way back. So, how do you look at this pretty open field, also with relatively limited time before, for example, Road to Nationals?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be working on the new heroes because I consider the old heroes somewhat solved on the main way to play the deck or the best way to play the deck. Now that isn't to say that I can't go back and you know retune Prism or whatever. And obviously, I'm looking at decks that got new cards. So, for example, Lexi got a bunch of new toys to play with. So that I consider like a new deck. Even Old Him to a lesser extent got a bunch of the ice cards. So my initial goal is going to be to try to build the best version of the newest heroes and the best versions of the like. Is there anything I can do with the decks that got new cards? And then I will play them against the decks that are already established. So I'll take Drum Eye and run it up against a Prism deck, something I've already done at least once. Um, and by doing that, I'm hoping to find the best build. I'm not necessarily trying to find the best 80 cards. I'm trying to find the best 60 cards, the best like initial plan for the deck, because I don't even think that's known information right now, right? Like, what is the best? Like, Icelander might be a little more known because it was in Blitz, but Dromai and Fi, these are completely new strategies. So finding the initial 60 cards that you want to play into most of your matchups is going to be puzzle piece number one. And then after that, it's going to be, you know, okay, what are its bad matchups? Can we fix that with the sideboard? Or is there another strategy that we can play? And then it's like 20 and 20 cards, and we're putting these 20 cards in for this or whatever. And so that's my general strategy when I'm building decks, and my general strategy when I'm trying to tune them as well.
nice. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that sentiment with the new heroes and stuff. I've been really trying to crack Icelander, and it is mixed results. But I just went back and like looked through like my initial lists that I was playing with, and I'm like, oh, I've made so much progress like already. Like, oh, of course that's gone because that was like horse shit or whatever, and not correct. And now we're getting to the phase where we're coming back on like some cards that I was like, I think this is good, and then you like they're bad because you're not sure what the real play pattern is, how they fit in, and then you're like, oh, now I understand it more. Maybe we put these back in and see if they're any better. So yeah, I totally feel that.
I have a bit of a follow up. I don't know if this is too abstract, but Taylor and I have talked about this before, right? So we kind of approach like I guess deck building quite a bit differently, right? Like I will so with Dromai, right? I'm gonna make like a pretty red line aggro version. I'm gonna try to play it control. I'm just gonna like slap lists together and like play them and kind of see what I feel like really synergizes or is powerful or works. Um, Taylor's a bit more of the like recorded incremental changes to like measure the effects of adding or subtracting cards. You can interject, Taylor, if I'm off base here, but
No, you're totally. It's
you know,
data driven.
right,
Decisions. Yeah.
right. Take a list, change 3 cards or 6 or whatever, and like work it that way, which I will do after I've found what I prefer with the hero. But it's a lot, I don't know, I guess looser in the beginning. So how do you approach like when you're tackling Dromai or Phi, for example, coming up here? What are you looking to do?
Yeah, so I'd say I start off where Isaac starts, and then I end up where Taylor is. Um, and I would say I'm a little bit different. I like to try to identify synergies before I start building the decks. So I'll just theory craft and look at the cards before I put anything together. Like I'm not getting close to 60 without being like, for example, Oakenald's the most powerful card. I need to be playing the best Earth and Ice cards, for example, and this is the basis of my strategy. Or when I'm playing Prism Fatigue, I want to be able to present threats if they do nothing, but otherwise I want to be defending with block threes and block fours, for example. Um, so I want to come up with a general theme for a deck, whether it's based on 2 cards or a general idea, and then I try to make everything else fit that idea. And then once I get to that, then I'm building my 60 card deck. Um, then I'm going, and now I'm going to where Taylor is, and I'm going to be doing a lot of testing. I'm going to be calling friends up on the phone, be like, hey, or on the phone. Who do I call on the phone anymore? Maybe messaging, maybe messaging people, being like, hey, let's get on TTS, let's go to the shop, let's play. What do you guys think of this? Um, and I'm fortunate enough to now have like a pro tour testing group that I use for New Jersey, and it'll be a little bit different because not all of those players are going to France. But um, I have that to rely on. I have my initial testing team, my main guys that I test with, and I can always run past these things through multiple people, and I have multiple people to play against, and I'll be doing those incremental changes where I'm like, well, that card didn't work, let's throw that out and try something else, or maybe the whole strategy is kind of falling apart versus this, and I need some backup cards to help me, and that's my always been my mo on deck building is even in limited, I'm looking for synergistic ideas rather than and then go from there rather than just kind of throwing the 60 together and being like, well, this and this worked, or doing the incremental changes.
Right. Build decks, not just put cards in
Yeah.
a deck. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
saying that, not saying that everybody else just throws decks together or that you guys throw decks. I'm just saying that like I have to have that initial spark of an idea, and then I have to have everything revolve around that idea. Or for me, it just doesn't work. I'm not a deck build. Like it doesn't work. Like my mind just doesn't work that way for some reason.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like, I think my best example of how that went awry was when Tails dropped, and I was like, "Oh, Blossoming Spellblade. This card is crazy. This is so cool. I'm gonna build like a whole deck idea around it." And uh, I spent like too much time, I think, at the beginning of that meta, trying to figure that card out and make it good, and it just never got there.
I think what you said there was exactly where I would have stopped. Is you like I tried to make the card work, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I won't spend that much time on any one deck idea, if I can't make the card work very quickly within like, I can usually play 1 or 2 games and I'll give up on an idea rather quickly if I feel like the card isn't working. You know what I mean? So it would have to show me some extra powerful things in not a magical Christmas land type of scenario for me to
Right.
continue playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
I had stuck to the Death Dealer Lightning Flock Lexi dream a little bit too long. Because it's like so powerful and it obliterates Prism and it's just awesome. But then you play real games and you get like CNC'd once, or like anything happens, and then like Viscerai has a bunch of armor, whatever, and it's just like, I don't know. I like couldn't let it go. But then I played in a couple pro quests and went like 3-3 and was like, all right, I have to move on to something else.
Yeah, I spent. Speaking of decks, I spent way too much time on for Pro Tour. I spent close to 150 games on a Lightning Death Dealer list, and I had about 3 or 4 people saying they were going to play it before it started falling apart. So we all back pocket. I think there's probably like a group of us that we don't like. We all don't know that we're around the world that we're like, yeah, we have this Lightning deck left
Yeah, yeah,
Lexi
yeah.
Death Dealer list
Yeah.
for some tournament down the line.
Nobody
Totally.
knows how cool this deck is. You draw so many cards. It's like Lightning Briar, but with Lexi. Yeah. So funny. Had many chats with Isaac and friend of the show Yuki, and friend of the show, perhaps your friend Zane Johnson as well, about that list and stuff. Hilarious. I remember playing it one time and was like, "What the fuck is this? Like, I just get CNC'd and fucking lose. This is bullshit." I'm
Yeah,
so mad.
me and
Yeah,
Zane spent. I had Zane. Zane was one of the 3 or 4 that was definitely on the train for a bit, and he had his own version, and I had my own version. We're like, yeah, this is great. And then about 2 or 3 weeks from Pro Tour, we're like, are you getting the middling results that we're getting now that people have tuned their?
That's
Great.
funny you mentioned that, because isn't that weird how that it's like you can get lists dialed and there's like definitely a superior list in general, but then you'll have really good players who just disagree on like, you know, 2 to 6 cards or whatever. And it doesn't change the deck that much, but it's like the way you pilot it, the cards you want in it are better because you're like incapable of just adapting and like making a different decision in that line every time. I don't know why that is, but it's like, people will run the same chain list, but then they'll have like 3 cards different and they'll both do really well throughout, the year or whatever. But it's like, it's funny that even the top players, get like pretty stuck on like a certain gameplay decision or a certain card sometimes. I just think it's funny that that kind of very human nature thing still persists.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Um, that like for I think what you said about play patterns, like if this might work for somebody and this might work for somebody, and they both have different styles of playing, but and it's like, okay, this person has like 6 cards different, which should be like a huge. That's like 10% of your deck,
Yeah.
but over the course they have similar results, and the percentage points when you break it down might not be that much because their play patterns dictated that they should play that card. I can come up with one example from Lightning Lexi in particular, is that we had this guy, Peter, because me and Zane both agreed that we should be playing some number of ice cards in our Lightning lists, specifically like Winter's Bite and things like that. And he took it a step further and was like, no, we should be playing Frostlock with only like 6 or 9 ice cards. And we all just like completely dismissed it, but he was winning. He was smashing people that didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
And we just never gave him the time of day on that. And so it's just interesting, definitely how you say it, how it works out.
Yeah, because it's like you're like however you like you'll do this in testing, right? And you'll be in the testing dungeon and playing against your team, and then you'll go out into the wild and you'll be playing the exact same matchup you've been testing, and you'll sit across from your opponent and they'll make a play or play a card that hasn't been in the list you've been testing against, and you'll be like, oh, well, that changes my decision tree now, and then that kind of, can spiral either good or bad into like the rest of the game. Um and so like those additions or subtractions in decks, like, that's what, potentially the real world situation is that you're up against a deck that's running cards you haven't seen before. Like at the most recent Road to Nats, I played against a Viserai who played Red Captain's Call, played two of them in one turn, and I was like, what is happening right now? And he just like high rolled me off the table with his Red Captain's Call Viserai deck. And I was like, God dang it. This is where we're at in this freaking Starvo meta, is we just gotta play the cards with the biggest upside, even if they like fall flat sometimes. Like, all right, here we go.
Absolutely.
Um,
So Tyler, let's. So, what do you think is the best deck moving into the Uprising meta? Is it Prism or is it Briar? Because I feel like people are going back and forth. And as you, as an authority on Prism, give us your authority take or whatever.
Yeah, my authority take. Um, I will say that the last time I tried to call the meta, I did a Twitter space with like Tarek and Matt Rogers. Go right when they made the decision about the Autumn's Touch restrictions and things like that. And we're like, all of us were on board that Prism was not going to be a thing because aggro decks were unlocked versus Starvo. And then we all went back into our testing dungeons and realized that Casino Starvo was still fine versus aggro decks, and that was still going to gatekeep aggro decks, and so Prism was fine. Prism had a space in the meta. So as as an authority, I wouldn't say I'm the authority on Prism. There's a lot of there's a lot of other players out there who are really good. Pheno Black and others who just like consistently play Prism to great results. I would say that Prism has always been an anti-meta deck, and by that I mean that like it needs. Everything is an anti-meta deck to a degree. What I vision right now is that there's this cycle. There's aggro decks. You have your Briar decks, maybe Fi, Katsu, things like that. These are decks that can go again multiple times and go wide, or like hit you a lot. They don't have a lot of other things outside of the damage they do. They're not presenting on-hit triggers or disruption that much of any kind. They might throw a Command and Conquer in there, but they're mostly aggro decks. These decks are generally beat up on by the disruption decks. So these are your ice decks. So like Lexi and now Icelander kind of fill that role. Starvo kind of filled this role. It was like kind of between her aggro plus disruption deck, which made it so strong. But the disruption decks mostly beat up on the aggro decks, and then generally Prism, the Illusionist, the board state decks, and now Dromai are going to beat up on your disruption decks, and then the aggro decks beat up on the board state decks because they can go again, and then kill your board state. The one thing that throws a wrench in this is going to be the fatigue decks, the old, your Oldhim, your Guardian decks. They fill the same kind of role, in my opinion, that the disruption decks do. Is that they're trying to, block out the aggro decks, and they've been successful with it so far. But those decks also generally seem to beat the disruption decks as well, which has made the disruption decks like Ice Lexi not that great unless Guardian is like completely removed from the picture, which is what happened at Nationals, right? Like there was like maybe a couple of Bravo players, but they were getting beat up on pretty hard. And then so that's the general cycle that I see. So as far as like what the best deck is, it's always gonna be like if this is the best deck, then these decks can get played to counter it. And then sometimes you get decks that are too powerful. So if Briar and Fi end up being too powerful for like the disruption decks or the Guardian decks, and they made it like 50-50 and it's mostly going to be aggro decks, then I don't see a place for Prism or Dromai. But if, Oldhim and Lexi and Icelander end up being, the quote unquote best decks, and they're really good into the aggro decks, and they have some game versus, Prism, then Prism and Dromai have their spots. And that's generally how it should be, right? Like a rock, paper, scissors type of meta call. Right now I see Prism as still being the strongest deck going into this, because I don't think that Briar and I don't think that Fi can match up with Oldhim. I think Oldhim is going to be too powerful into everything that's going on. As I said, Oldhim's going to be powerful into Ice Lexi. It's going to be powerful into aggro decks. The one problem is going to be these illusionist decks, and so I don't I when you're in that kind of a meta, you have your tier one choice, and then you have your choice that beats that because all of the other decks have been pushed out. And so that's where if I had to make my choice right now of like, okay, this is going to be what the meta is going to be, it's going to be that. It's going to be Oldhim is the best deck right now, and that the illusionist decks are going to be there to counter it. Um, I guess the thing that can throw the wrench in there is you can beat you can then tune your decks to try to beat that. But I don't see like Fi beating Oldhim. I don't see a world where that happens.
Okay, so in this scenario, right, because we're living in a real world scenario right now, and you're talking about this rock paper scissors, format,
Mm-hmm.
right? So say you first, I mean, I would ask like, how do you choose? But maybe that's a bit too much. But say you land on Prism now, right? Because you think that Ice and Control will beat out Fi in the aggro decks, right? So then Prism has pretty good game into a lot of things, and then we'll have good game into Control and Ice, right? So that's a good pick. So when you pick Prism, how do you? I don't know, like how do you shore up those bad matchups, right? Like to me, sometimes it's kind of doable, but like right now, I've been working on Dromai a bit, and the Fi matchup, it seems I've only played it twice so far, but I didn't even know where to begin making it better, right? So I don't know, like do you just try to tackle your bad matchups and fix it, or like when do you know that it's not when do you just like dismiss a matchup, or is that not ever?
Oh no, I have I dismissed matchup even in Pro Tour. So I dismissed the Briar matchup with my Prism deck as unwinnable, like not unwinnable, but like I accepted that I was only going to win about 25 to 30% of the time into Briar if when played optimally. Um, Now you saw me on camera destroy a Briar player, but I still consider that in the small sliver of I'm not going to win most of the time, and I accepted that this was my best percentage play was to just play defense reactions and my aura plan into them, and then try to overwhelm them with auras and hope they had a couple offhands so they couldn't kill me quick enough. Which again, in testing was only happening maybe 1 out of 4 games. So um, in that matchup, I couldn't theorize another way to beat them given the tools that Prism had. But I also didn't expect there to be a lot of Briar. So I thought it was a good choice, but into Briar, I was ready to eat my 25% matchup because I expected it to be 1 out of my however rounds, and that's actually how it turned out. Is I played Katsu once, I played Briar once, and then I didn't see them again for the rest of the tournament. Whereas I did play against Starvo 4 times, I played against Chain 8 times, and those were the matchups I expected to see. Not 8 times, I think it was like 6 times. But so one, if you don't expect to see the deck a lot, then it's okay to be like, this isn't worth the sideboard slots. The other thing is some decks just don't have the tools to beat other decks, and that's okay. Then but if you expect to see it a lot, then it might be time to move on to another deck. Um, so, for example, when it came to nationals and I expected to see Briar running rampant, I did not think that Prism was the deck, so I went with the Briar deck instead. I made the audible, right? So those are the two situations that you have to. You're either going to have to. You either have to fix it, you have to accept it and plan that that's not going to be a big part of your tournament, or you have to get off the deck entirely. Those are your 3 options, and I've done all three. People said that people have always said that Prism is bad into Chain, and twice now I have destroyed Chain using the fatigue strategy. Once in Vegas, and then again at Pro Tour, I went 5-1 into Chain. So you have to identify what situation you're in and then plan accordingly. And That's about the most advice I could give you because it's going to be up to each individual person to identify the metagame, right? Like I can't, I got the metagame wrong. I get the metagame wrong all the time. Um, the people that do well are the ones that get it right, and then continually right. And yes, I've been fortunate enough to get it right most of the time, but even I'm going to get it wrong, you know, a decent amount. So um, identify the metagame, plan accordingly with one of those three options.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the idea of a rock, paper, scissors meta. So I think, I can't remember who was talking about this. Either it was maybe a Tarek Twitter space or Arsenal Pass, maybe with Tarek is maybe why I can't remember which one it was. But they were kind of going back and forth about the idea of rock, paper, scissors and whether or not that is where the game is healthiest, where you have like 90-10s and this deck beats that deck, that deck beats that deck, and that beat deck, and then the other deck beats the deck that beats that deck. Or is it like maybe better if we're at like 60-40 and like the cards you choose for your sideboard really matter in how you attack your, like, when you're the 40 into the 60. I think me and Isaac, maybe not on the pod, but certainly off air in the hang zone that we dwell in sometimes, have talked about how maybe we like a metagame that where the best decks are like 60-40 into everybody. And then so now what cards I take in or out matter a lot more. And that's maybe a little bit more interesting for us, or more our flavor. And so like, so what's your take on that whole kind of large topic there that I laid before you?
Yeah, I remember hearing it too, and I don't blame you. Tarek's on everything these days, so I'm just going to assume that he was in on it. No, I will say that this is two different ways of playing a game, right? You can either have a game where, you know, maybe there's like one or two best, like everything's in that 60-40 range. So you can kind of like play your deck and then everyone has the sideboard cards to like handle everything, I guess. Um, or you can play a game where you're playing a game before you go, right?
Right.
You have you can gain a lot of percentage points by having the deck. And what I want to say on this is a lot of people point to like Oldham versus Prism as like the poster child for the problem, right? Like, oh, Oldham can't beat Prism. And I think I heard this on whatever it was that we heard this on, but I want to say it was ours. I'm almost certain it was Arsenal Pass. But I want to say that like these decks can be built differently, right? You don't have to accept a 90-10 matchup into Prism. You could just build your deck differently. And I want to, like, we did this in there's a team league that it's like Fab Teams League or something like that that a lot of the higher level players play. And for one of the weeks, you actually got to know your opponent's deck, right? And so we had a Bravo main that only played Bravo and that was it. And he knew that he was getting paired into Prism, which is like, one of the poster childs, maybe not as bad as Oldham, but it's like, oh, Bravo's generally going to lose this matchup.
Right.
But he was licking his chops because he knew he was playing Prism, and he knew that the Prism player there was no way that if he could build his deck in such a way just to beat that deck, there was no way that the Prism player could win because the Prism player didn't have the tools to fight back. And that's exactly how it played out on paper. Is that he just played, lead the charges and enough phantasm poppers and then just go again cards, and he was kind of foregoing a lot of the big attacks, and he just crushed them. So like, just because Oldham into Prism as it's currently constructed is a 90-10 matchup doesn't mean that it always has to be. And so I want to get that off the doorstep right off the fact, is that I think a lot of people just don't go to the next step, which is like, okay, maybe I should change my deck, rather than the deck as currently constructed has a bad matchup into Prism. Like, well, yeah, obviously, duh.
Right. Like people are going off of the deck onto the other deck that just like does the thing that counters it better.
Yeah.
Um, right, is what you're saying, rather than just like changing their deck. So then, if that's the case, then what's the advantage of changing your deck if you're like kind of going away from like the inherent power that your hero like gives you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's still like ways to build Oldhim. Say that you wanted to be like good into Prism, and then you wanted to be good into aggro decks. I think there's a way that you could build the deck to do that, but I'm not sure that you could build the deck to be like good into Prism, good into aggro, and then also good into like Dash, for example, or something like that, right? And you might be giving up some percentage points on aggro, but I think that's where I would get into. I actually like that style of play, that you can build your deck in such a way to go this way or that way, or maybe like you said, you need to get off the deck entirely, and because the power is just not like, you're not using your hero power anymore. And I personally like that style of play, where, because I mean, think about the viewing experience, right? If you're like tuning in to watch a Flesh and Blood tournament, you're not going to want to tune in if everybody's playing the same two decks. And yeah, sure, any player can win and any
Right.
player could lose, um, but you're tuning in for the excitement of the deck building. For, I would say, for the overwhelming majority of people, they want to see what people are playing, right? And if you already know what everyone's going to be playing these two decks, then I think that turns off a lot of the viewership and a lot of the fun. Um, on the other hand, it also isn't fun bringing an Oldhim deck into a Prism, a competitive Prism tournament, and everyone's playing Prism, and you're just sitting there with your Oldhim deck as currently constructed. I get that, but when you're playing competitive TCGs, I think you need to accept the inevitability that you're going to make a wrong decision here or there.
Right.
Um, so that's where I lie on it. I'm coming at it from a competitive standpoint, and I get that's going to be different than someone who's playing at an armory or something like that and gets the same experience. So, um, yeah, that's
Oh
why.
no, we're a highly competitive podcast. We have like top 8 nationals, Prince of Precision over here sitting next to us. So, dude, we're the you know top 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 doggies.
Yeah, how does it feel to be the only player that didn't top eight that nationals? Because I also top eight.
Not great, not great.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Well, it didn't go,
It's
so.
it's a
Yeah,
freaking
no.
goddamn teacher life, man. They just freaking they hate teachers and their scheduling, and it's so
Mhm.
hard to get time off of work. That's what I'm going to
I
say.
I think you did make a really good point about, because I feel like sometimes when a meta gets kind of stale, everybody starts working off of the top list, which is like the correct thing to do, right? Because it's the most powerful list in the meta. But then, like you said, if there's too many prisms, you just like kind of auto go to like, oh yeah, Oldhim's terrible into prism, and maybe it is, no matter how well you build it, but going from like 10 to 40 is quite a lot of percentage points if the meta shifts enough to allow for somebody to get creative and reinvent their deck a bit. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing on that real quick is that, going back to last meta, is so you have a lot of people who complain about like 1910 matchups, and then you have the same people complaining about the meta that just was, right, the Starvo meta. And I think that you're now on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Because if you like the rock paper scissors, then you hated the last meta, because the problem with the last meta is that Starvo was no deck was even above 60% into it. Even me bringing my Prism deck, I'm like, yeah, I got my 60% matchup into Starvo, and that's why Starvo was so powerful. It was good into everything. So if you enjoy having 60-40 matchups into everything, then maybe you enjoyed the last meta. But it's weird how we have complaints on two ends of the spectrum. And it's a lot. It's hard to make a card game. Let's be honest. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't be there. I'm happy that I'm on the playing side, but I much prefer the rock paper scissors formats to this deck is sort of unbeatable format.
Oh yeah, I actually quite enjoyed the last format. I didn't like Starvo design wise. I didn't like playing against it casually. I like had a lot of issues with that, but I did like that. Like I could bring Lexi to a pro quest, and I could actually like compete against most. I'd like Still don't love the Prism matchup. That kind of sucks. But, you know, it's like fun that you can actually play instead of just a super polarized or, you know, top deck. So I guess there were a lot of silver linings to the last meta, despite how much we all complained about it.
Sure, Kano being another one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, and it shows, I think, Tyler, how you kind of answered this question that you're like a top level player, because it's in the same vein of what we hear, at least publicly, from other players who are very good at Flesh and Blood, is kind of like being willing to say, well, yeah, this is kind of what everybody says, but I think I can like make a change with what everybody is saying and do something a little bit different and find success through that, right? Is like really taking a step back and saying like, well, just because everybody says it's this way doesn't mean it has to be that way, right? Um, and you know, that's how you can keep your edge, is when you like, I think anyway, that you like make sure you know things, you know, like for the reason that you know them, because you have like broke it down and thought about it yourself, rather than just like taking what everybody has to say as like gospel, right? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get things, especially if you're plugged into like Flesh and Blood Twitter at all. Like you get people going off the deep ends on all sorts of things, and then you have a lot of people that are actually bringing up good points. You know, like I know a big one that Tarek brings up a lot is prizing at LGSs, or something that I think I'm going to start bringing up more. Sooner, is like how the Fab Elo is not updating. There's like a lot of actual gripes to be had.
Right.
Another one being tournaments aren't getting announced on time. There's a lot of stuff that is actually like needs to be said out there. But then, you get these things that are like, really, guys, just think about it for a little bit longer, and maybe you would realize that that's not actually a problem. But I'm not saying that it isn't for everybody, right? Like for some people, maybe they really just don't like rock paper scissors types of formats, or expounding upon that. And that's okay too. It's okay to have that opinion, but it's not my opinion. So
I wanted to ask you about, I was really impressed. I mean, like you won Vegas, which was like a 900 person event or whatever, which is extremely impressive. But I was really impressed by you as a player when you top aided US Nationals with Lightning Briar, right? But running a deck, like how long had you been on that deck?
so it was on our radar that the deck was going to be a thing slightly before English Nationals. So obviously everybody knows that Matthew Folks kind of ran over that tournament there, and that's
Mm-hmm.
when it kind of like got out. But we had heard rumblings about the deck, us being like my little group of testers,
Right. Right.
that oh, this like zero cost Lightning Briar deck is going to be a thing. So we had started looking into the deck, and so you'll notice actually that like our deck list is actually a decent amount different.
Right.
If you go back and look, we had like Flicker Wisp in the deck, which is why I guessed it earlier.
Yeah. Rights
Um,
of Lightning also.
Rights of Lightning,
Yeah.
yeah. And so we were going at it at a little bit different way. And so, but I hadn't been on it for much longer than that. So obviously, I had kind of picked up the deck in maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then put it into practice there.
Sure, but I mean, so like 3 or 4 weeks starting from scratch on a deck into all your matchups, including the mirror, is like asking quite a lot. And but you did it, you adapted well, and you top aided, which is awesome. And just I guess very adaptable, to use that word
I,
again.
I think what you have to realize is that like everybody else is in the same boat, right? Like everybody else had to do the same exact thing. I just did it slightly better. Um, I think, for an example, it was really easy to identify the good Briar players because I think I played maybe 8 Briar mirrors that weekend or something like that. Something insane. Like it was just an insane amount of Briar mirrors, and I was winning most of them. And everyone kept. I kept losing the dice rolls, and they kept wanting to go first, and I was like, thank you, I want to go second. Until I hit Tarek in the match before. It was the last match of Swiss. We were both locked for top 8 already, and my mind was kind of off of that game anyway, and I got smashed. But he was the first Briar player to actually decide to go second against me, and so that was the first time I identified. I'm like, oh, somebody has actually played this matchup quite a bit and has realized that like you can just block the first turn and then start playing. You get to the first real turn. So um, that yeah, I'd say that I wouldn't say that I'm like the most adaptable person, but I was adaptable enough for that weekend.
Still lost to Isaac too.
I did. Man,
you know,
nice.
In case the people forgot at home.
Yeah, that was. We have a thing as really competitive Flesh and Blood players, and you guys will have to tell me if this is true for you guys too. Is that I remember very little about winning Vegas, for example. If I want to remember something that actually happened in the game, other than like judge calls or something like that, I actually have to go back and like watch those matchups. But in big high profile matches that I've lost, I can remember very, very vividly every single play. And so something that I take with me actually as like something where I'm like I can always play more, and this is an example of this is my matchup versus Isaac is we were going into the last, I think it was the exact last turn of the game because I died that turn. I was like, I couldn't think of a card that he could have in his hand that could beat me. And that's because I hadn't played against Lexi a lot. And so what ended up happening is he ended up bolt and shotting me, and he has one card left in with like, I think 2 resources remaining. And I ended up blocking and 1 floating, and I ended up
so if I reload, you want to block the reload. Because with 1 floating, I could reload an arrow and fire it.
Yep, and then the last card ended up being Endless Arrows, and I just wasn't thinking about it at the time because it wasn't like the big Lexi card at the time, or like I wasn't thinking about Lexi, and I ended up dying to you just Voltaring in the Endless Arrow, and then Bullseye Bracer using the Endless Arrow. So if I had just let the Bolt and Shot hit, then I probably would have won that game. But because I didn't spend the time on that particular matchup, so I always take that with me as as one of my losses that I learned a lot from, not only because of the Endless Arrows, but because it's like something that I use is like, okay, you can always spend more time on matchups because what if you don't think about Endless Arrows in the future? Not not that particular card, but some card from some other deck, right? And so you guys will have to tell me if that's something that is true for you guys, that you guys don't think about the wins as much and you think much more.
Oh yeah, I remember you were running Skelita, which is just more armor and more agony for me. But what'll really get you though is like when you start thinking about like, I think that you made the right decision statistically. It just lost you that particular turn, right? But approach with the same, right? Because odds are I have a 1-cost arrow is my other card. So then if you let the bolt and shot hit, then I reload it and fire it. So you prevented that from happening. It was like only Endless Arrow, right? So, anyway, this like kind of thing comes up a lot where, or at least for me, where I'll like lose a game and then I'll think about the decision tree and I'm like, did I make the wrong play, or statistically, did I make the right play? And I don't know. That kind of like drives you nuts a bit.
It's also hard too, right? Like, it's the same thing when I'm coaching like basketball. It's like so we in our state playoff game we lost by 3 points, and I got really mad at my team at the end of first quarter because we let the other team kind of get past half court and heave up like a buzzer beater at the end of the first quarter, from like 35 feet, and they made it, right? And we lost by 3. And if we had done a better job like defending that particular play, maybe we go into overtime, maybe we win, etc. But one of my great mentors was at that game, and I kind of mentioned that to him, and he was like, well, it's like it's a 1 possession game that you lost, but this is the hard part about basketball is you're not sure which possession it is, so it's like the same thing. Like, yeah, you lose to Isaac on that final play, but there's a bunch of other turns leading up before that, and maybe you actually did like leak a damage elsewhere in that game that maybe you shouldn't have. And so that's like also the maddening part is you're like, well, I know specifically right here, but if I can't remember all of the game as vividly as that last moment, like maybe there was another decision tree later that plays out, quantum theorily throughout the game or whatever. But my other little bit here is, yes, I remember very vividly all of my losses all of the time, very painfully, especially like I lost to a fatigue prism for like the first time in a million years on chain in Vegas, and I was just so upset. I mean, he triple arclight settled me like 3 out of 4 turns near the end of the game, and I was like tilting off the face of the earth. But I cannot forget that game. Can't forget it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's true of. I think that's true of a lot of competitive players. Is my theory, and that's why I wanted to ask and just kind of verify that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a healthy mindset to be in. I wish I remembered like more plays in my winning matchups, when I just like win. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it would be great
Yeah.
if I could remember that more as well for my mental health.
Yeah, I think for all of us that would be great. Someone come help us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys sorry to not Isaac, do you have more to say? I kind of want to talk about limited before we get out of here, if
Yeah,
possible.
totally. I was just going to mention that you brought up a really good point, like that we talked about in our tempo episode about how like every decision along the game leads to so you might lose because you made a decision when somebody's at 36 health and you're at 33 and you misplayed that play and it didn't get you closer to your, win condition or whatever, right? And that for me is like really hard to, analyze. It's like hard to reflect back on a game. I mean, obviously, if you misplayed, you'll remember that. But maybe if you just played suboptimally or towards the wrong strategy or whatever, then it gets like pretty tough to. I don't know. Do you have a good way to break it down to look back at your games?
Um, I'm super fortunate that I'm probably the most streamed player on the planet. So,
Yep.
because I've literally been in every tournament I've been in, I've been on camera. So it's always nice to go look. But I know that there's lots of games where I missed a tunic trigger. I blocked in an inefficient. I mean, going back to my Tarek top eight, when I was played against Tarek in the top eight, I think that was again a very winnable matchup for me, and I misplayed and I got outplayed and I lost that game. And I think about these mistakes. I think the healthy thing is not to dwell on them for too long. It's just to take what you can learn from them and then move on to trying to put that into practice. But what I do think of is that for every mistake or 2 mistakes or 3 mistakes that I made in a game, there's probably 3 more that I didn't catch. And so I use that as motivation to like just really hammer down on, okay, tunic every turn, I got to make sure I do that. Okay. And what I end up doing is I use a lot of shortcuts, going back to teaching. You teach kids like PEMDAS for order of operations, or you teach them these different things in their brains. I try to associate things like going back to Prism. I try to associate like, oh, Parable's like really good into Bolton, I should arsenal it and try to catch them with like a Via the Vanguard or something like that. And so I try to like shortcut things like that where I'm like, oh, this card is good into this matchup, and just kind of have the reason somewhere in the back of my mind. Um, or something that I took away from the Tarek matchup, for example, is that I blocked inefficiently. Where I had a chance to block. There was like a attack for 2, and I ended up blocking it with 2 of my armor pieces when I knew that the attack was going to continue on. And so I ended up blocking with 2 armor pieces that each had 1 on it, and then I ended up blocking with the 2 block on blocking with a two blocks on a 3 block later, right? Where I could have blocked with a 2 block and then 2 plus armor and still had 1 armor, right? So I used that as just a lesson that like, oh, I should, if I knew the turn's going to keep on going, I should block 2 for 2 and then keep myself flexible, even though it usually you're taught to block with your armor first if you're getting to the end of the game. And
Yeah.
so I try to use that's like my main thing is using those shortcuts to try to help myself. And a lot of those learning experiences come from mistakes earlier on.
Yeah. You can't just lose, you have to learn.
Exactly.
Yep. Sweet. Great. Uh Hard segue into limited. Okay. So again, we're gonna have a dual format for Leal, Nationals, the
Road to Nats.
Road to
Yeah.
Nats, our draft to what is everybody's, I mean, and me and Isaac actually haven't even talked about this on the pod yet, about limited. So let's all talk about Uprising limited first takes. Isaac, let's go to you first because Tyler has been giving it to us pretty good.
My first takes on Uprising Limited.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I only played in one pre-release, and I won quite a lot with Fi.
And I top aided nationals and I won these things. Oh, were we not just talking about all of our accomplishments?
I'm just talking about pre-release.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But just my initial impression, right, is it is kind of rock, paper, scissorsy, right? Like Dromai beats Eastlander, Eastlander beats Fi, Fi beats Dromai. And that's very much how it feels when you play these heroes out in Classic Constructed as well as in Limited. But I do think it does feel like this, it feels as well, put together as well as, Arya, in the sense that, like, hopefully it's going to play out where it's like, okay, so five seems pretty strong, right? But then if there's like 4 5s at the table, then like even the Dromais are going to be able to beat them, right? Or, and so on and so forth. It does feel like it has that amount of depth to it or nuance to like an Arya, right? Like Lexi sucks until there's only one Lexi at the table, then it's awesome. So it kind of like kept ebbing and flowing, the most popular archetype, and everything was kind of viable until too many people were picking it. And I really hope Uprising's the same way. I don't know if that's the hot take you wanted, but that's more of a general
I just want whatever
impression.
Whatever takes you got, baby. I'll take them. What do you got, Tyler? Talk to me.
All right. So sealed is you're mostly going to be opening up 5 decks just because the floor on that deck is decently high compared to the other two. You're going to open up pools and you're going to be like, I only have 5 blues in my Icelander deck, unplayable. But 5 seems to always be playable no matter what. So if you've played a lot of pre-releases and you played, the world premiere, you might have this notion that Vi is like maybe overpowered or something like that. I've heard that from a lot of people, and I don't think that's going to be true when you get into draft. I mean, I've only done the one, or sorry, I've done 2 drafts, one with pack prizing and then one as part of the world premiere that was a draft on Sunday. And I think that's much more nuanced, and people haven't. I think that you're going to find that that the best players in the world are going to really rise to the top in this road to nationals. Like you're going to see a lot of big names that are doing well in draft. Not necessarily because like they're the greatest drafters of all time, but because they're going to put in the time to realize that this is a really nuanced format. In that, yes, you have this circle that if you're just drafting the cards, Icelander's supposed to beat Dromai, or sorry, Icelander's supposed to beat Fi, Fi's supposed to beat Dromai, and Dromai's supposed to beat Icelander. But then you have all these generic cards in the mix, and that's what I've started to figure out is that these generic cards are actually like a lot better than they initially looked. Especially the sideboard cards that are like Phantasm Poppers or like having Arcane Barrier in your deck is actually like going to be a big thing. And so there's a lot of these like little nuances that I think the people that pick up on those first are going to be the ones that are going to do well at not only Road to Nationals but also the Pro Tour as well.
Yeah, I
Nice.
am like really surprised at how tight the design of this set feels. Like there doesn't feel like there's really any fluff, so like I think a card that I would say that maybe I thought was kind of dog crap was Brain Freeze. I was like, this card freaking sucks. It is not good. But actually having played it now, I'm like, oh, I get it. It's like really serviceable as like just literally taking away a card. You know what I mean? Like you just take away that zero cost card. It could be their blue, and then now they have like less resources, and it's really hard to like quantify like how much damage that potentially saved you, because then you still got to like kind of block out your turn or like play efficiently or whatever. But um just the design from like the equipment that you can draft, and like you said, how the generics function. Like I was so surprised at how much more serviceable all of those generics were. Um, that it just led me to believe that there's just like, well, there's just so much to explore still. Obviously, like it's really, really early in the limited game meta, but the yeah, it's really good, and I think there will be a bit more like nuance than just like rock paper scissors happening, because there are some like real key like kind of hate cards and combos in the set that you could like wind up like drafting and that sort of thing, and shoring up your like bad matchups. Like if you get Oasis Respite but no like Arcane Barrier, like you're probably gonna be fine against Icelander. You know what I mean? Um, so
I
yeah.
Yeah,
re- I I really like red trade in because I thought that card was like so bad, and I still think it's pretty bad. But then when I was like playing limited, I was like, oh, this is just one card to turn on go again for your Aether Wings, right? Or
Yeah.
it's like just the card I have to arsenal and fi, and then it's another auto go again. I was like, oh, this is like actually like has a lot of utility, even though it's not really good, but it's just like fills those roles really nicely. And just looking at the set beforehand, I was this is a bad card. So
Yeah.
just wait till you get to the trade in to discard one of your Phoenix Flames to get a new card, and then still get your Phoenix Flame back.
nice.
Yeah, like that. Like there's all these cool little combos uh that are really fun, that like, make the level of play like a bit you can see the high level play beginning to emerge, or that, the inklings of it and whatnot, So yeah, I think it's great. I'm like really excited.
Me too.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you guys
You-
want to talk about limited before we move on to kind of the end of the show where we get to our signature segments?
No, I'm just really excited for the limited format. I'm excited for constructed. That's about it.
Do you feel confident in draft?
I do. I put in a lot of time already. I'm kind of on my like high. I'm on a like small break because there's no cards. There's not going to be any products out because of the announcement that shipments are going to be delayed. So I decided to use that for my mental time, and then right when Road to Nat, right when that product's out, probably that Friday, I'll be drafting, and then there's Road to Nats the next day for me. There's actually two limited Road to Nats back to back that weekend in SoCal, so I'm excited for that, and I feel like I'm going to have a leg up on the competition already.
Nice. Watch out.
You heard it here. His leg is up.
Tyler's coming for you.
Okay, well, let's get into signature segment. Speaking of limited, Tyler, we have a segment, Pick, Pass, Pray. It's a draft scenario. I'm going to give you guys 3 cards. They're going to be from Uprising. You're going to pick one, pass one, and pray one comes back around. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm familiar.
Cool. Okay, so are you guys ready then?
I am.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, Tyler, you get to go first because you are the guest. So the first card up we have is Invoke Kyloria, which is a Draconic Illusionist action invocation. It defends for 3, pitches for 1, costs 1, and it says transform target Ash you control into Kyloria. Go again. And then the dragon itself that you then transform into attacks for 4, has 2 health, and it says whenever Kyloria hits a hero, gain control of an item they control. If you don't gain control of an item this way, draw a card. Okay. Second card is Blaze Headlong, Draconic Attack Action. It attacks for 4, defends for 2, costs 0, and pitches for 1 because it is a red. And it reads, if you have played another red card this turn, Blaze Headlong has go again. The Volkai army of vigilantes, renegades, and outlaws is like a tinderbox looking for a spark. Okay?
Okay.
Third and final card is Spellfire Cloak. Wizard equipment chest, defends for 0, but reads instant. Destroy Spellfire Cloak, gain a resource. Activate this ability only during an opponent's turn. And it also has Arcane Barrier 1. So, Tyler, which one are you going to pick, pass, and pray comes back around?
So this is interesting because I don't think that Legend Story Studios has actually come out with the way that you're actually supposed to draft these, the double-sided cards, so the dragon in this case.
Right.
And so if it was at the world premiere, you kind of just put it down and that was the end of it. I don't know if you have to announce it or what. But I'm going to say that the dragon is not only the most powerful card here to take, but it's also a signal to the other drafters at the table that, hey, I'm an illusionist. You better stay away. And so that is something that you can try to do. But I'm very fond of Snatch Dragon, as we like to call it, at the table. Drawing cards is just too powerful effect. And then I'm gonna. So that's my pick. I'm gonna pray that Blaze Headlong comes back because it's a Draconic card and not a Ninja card, so it can still be that go again. And you'd be surprised at how often Phoenix Flames just make it into your deck anyway. Or sorry, this isn't the Phoenix Flame card. This is if you've played another red card, you get go again. But you play a lot of red cards in there. You want more red cards, and this is just more damage on top of that. And so this is still really relevant in Dromai. And then obviously we're gonna pass on the Wizard Cloak, even though I think that's also a very powerful card.
Nice. Isaac, what do you got?
I like the table flex. They actually did announce, so at competitive events, packs will be opened ahead of time and dragons will be replaced by tokens. At casual events, you just set it down and you can put a token on top of your stack to start, just to like keep things semi-hidden, you know? Okay, so I'm going to pick Blaze Headlong. This card is like pretty busted. It's just insanely powerful in either Draconic deck. I'm going to... This is kind of a... I don't really care, but I'm gonna pray the Wizard Cloak comes back around somehow, because then I'm the only Islander at the moment. But also, if Snatch Dragon comes back around, also that's also awesome, and I'm like the only Dromai and have a head start on that. So that's kind of like, I guess I'll pray the dragon comes back because then Blaze Headlong functions in that deck as well.
So you're going to pass on Spellfire Cloak?
Yeah, I would be ecstatic to see it though.
Yeah, these are all really good cards.
Taylor, what do you
got? So I'm going to pick Spellfire Cloak because if I wind up as Eastlander, I really, really want Spellfire Cloak because it's like, I really brings your deck from like, you know, maybe a C plus to maybe even a B because that ability is really strong. And then if you're in the mirror and they don't have a Spellfire Cloak, you're like way ahead. So I think just making that my first pick in like a bit of assurance is, I think, really important. And then I'm going to pray that Snatch Dragon comes back around for all the reasons previously stated, like drawing a card, It's cheap. It only costs 1 to invoke, and that's like way easier than the other cards that like cost 2 or more to invoke. So that's like really nice. And then I'm just gonna pass on Blaze Headlong. Like, I think there are better cards in that kind of slot that you can get elsewhere. Even though it is like really, really powerful, I think it's just when up against these other 2 cards is a little bit less. So those are my picks.
Nice new
All three
format.
different.
We all disagreed.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, yeah, we'll have to have you back on after the 4 weeks and have the same pick pass pray and see where we go, you know.
I have a feeling you guys will come over to my way of seeing things.
Oh, oh, pish posh, poppycosh. Okay, over to you, Isaac, for game from the closet.
Okay, here at the Attack Action Podcast, we love to play many games, not just Flesh and Blood. And sometimes we like to share one of those games with you in the hope that you will enjoy it as well. So this episode's board game from the closet is Tyler's game.
Hey, so I picked Sushi Go. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this game, but it's a drafting game, and this is I like playing this game like in between round, like playing a round in between Flesh and Blood rounds or whatever game I'm playing. Um, the idea is that like if you like playing limited, you like playing things like that, then you love drafting games like I do, and this is one of the best ones. Not only because it's like a fun game, but it's also like basic enough that you can explain the rules to somebody else um, pretty quickly. And I love games like that where it's like, hey, I can play with my Flesh and Blood friends who are like obviously big gamers, or I can play with my family. And so Sushi Go for that reason is my game of the week this week. Hey.
Totally. Yeah, I love Sushi Go. It's like so great. It is so much fun, and there's like a bit more depth to it for sure. Do you pick sashimi early hoping to see more, or are you just going to get like no points because you picked sashimi, you know? What is
Yep.
the value of getting the chopsticks right now in pick 3? You know, it's great. It's a really great game, and I also appreciate games that are like uh you can play with everybody, right? Everybody you can play them with. So yeah, it's really, really great. Excellent pick.
Absolutely.
Have you ever played Inish? Have you ever played that board game? Okay.
I have not.
Yeah, so it has a draft mechanic, but it's like a dudes on the map type of thing. So it has like some tactical uh area control elements to it, but you do a draft before every round of the game, and the cards you're drafting are the actions you can take on your turn. So you're like drafting what your plan is going to be, but also like sending signals to everybody else what you're going to do, and they can like counter pick the cards that are in the pool left over and stuff. It's great. It's also a really good game with
That
drafting in it.
if you say the word draft, it's like that's all you have. This game has drafting in it, and I'm like, oh, I'm there. It's over.
Sweet. Well, Tyler, I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on our show. I really appreciate it. It was really fun getting to know you and getting to talk to you about Flesh and Blood and stuff. And I can't wait to hang out with you at the Battle Hardened LA. Get a beverage, get a food item, all of the above.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, both of you guys, and it's been a blast. I'm sure that I talked probably a little too much, but you guys are just easy to talk to. Um, and keep up the good work with the podcast, and I will see you guys in Battle Hardened LA. How exciting is that?
So cool. Tyler, do you have any social media or articles coming out you want to plug? Feel free to shill yourself out to our audience if you need to.
Sure. Right now, I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can catch me at Pony_puddle. I'm trying to, I gotta buy the regular pony puddle off of the person that has it, that has like one follower or something like that. I don't know, or just change it in general. But that's where you can find me right now, at Pony_puddle. And it takes people a couple years to understand why that's my screen name, but I'll leave that up to the imagination for now. That'll be the main. If you want to catch me, message me or anything like that, it's going to be the best way.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great Twitter handle. It's right up there with, I think, Hayden Dale's at Fiendal. Dale.
It's a good one.
And Dale, yeah, it's really good. I unfortunately have no sort of play with anything in my name. So at Battle Bro Taylor it is, like a tool that I am, but whatever.
I think it's great.
Oh, thanks, bro. Yeah. Thanks, bro. Isaac, you want anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, you guys nailed it. That was a perfect note to get out of here. But thanks a lot, Tyler. It was really, really good to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Just and next time we see each other across the table, I hope our game is just as riveting, because it's probably one of the best games of Flesh and Blood I've ever played, to be honest.
I agree. Our game was extremely close, and a lot of decision points. It was really enjoyable. I don't know. I feel you have a lot of games like that, but they're few and far between, where you just really notice like a really, really nail biter,
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll catch you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the Attack Action Podcast. On Twitter, we are at BattleBro Taylor and at BattleBro Isaac. Shoot us an email, theattackactionpodcast@gmail.com.
If you would like to support us, like and subscribe, shop for singles using our affiliate link, or support our Patreon for as little as $4 per month.